Hello, good evening. Welcome to ITV News. This is Monday night's calendar.
Yes, good evening, and here are tonight's main stories.
What lengths will he go to? The Prime Minister's under fire for upgrading his local Yorkshire power supply to cope with a swimming pool. Those struggling to keep public ones open aren't impressed.
The leisure sector feels that swimming and leisure should be for everybody in the community, not just the wealthiest.
Thousands of appointments and operations are cancelled as junior doctors go on strike, saying they're undervalued and underpaid.
We're all trying to tell people this is not sustainable, and we're just not going to end up with enough doctors or nurses to be able to do a good job.
Sign of the times, how youngsters at Chesterfield broke new barriers as they introduced the spy rights to the crowd.
And ice and easy. Niall cruises to victory in the ITV1 Spectacular. So hello, good evening and welcome to Calendar. First tonight, as the cost of living crisis continues to bite and with a budget being prepared for Wednesday, Rishi Sunak has come under fire for paying out thousands of pounds of his own money to cope with the energy costs of a swimming pool at his North Yorkshire home.
Yes, Rishi Sunak's pool drains so much power he's had to upgrade the local electricity network. Well, Greg Eastill's in Richmond for us tonight. Greg, no suggestion that there's anything wrong with that, but with local leisure centres curbing their own opening hours to cope with the cost of electricity and the budget due in a few days, how does this look?
Well, look, first of all, you can probably make out behind me there, that little stone building is the pool house in question. No suggestion in any of this that Mr Sunak's had preferential treatment from the utility companies or that anybody else other than him has paid for the groundworks or the electricity going into that building. But all of this, of course, comes in the midst of a cost of living crisis, which, as you'll hear in a moment, junior doctors say is affecting them, but a cost of living crisis that's also affecting some of our community swimming baths amid reports that some of them are facing 300% increases in running costs, cutting their hours, and some might not even survive. So we've had this response this afternoon from one organisation campaigning for more money in this week's budget to help our community swimming baths stay in business.
The leisure sector feels that swimming and leisure should be for everybody in the community, not just the wealthiest. And at the moment, we're having to look at what works, what doesn't work, what's the most profitable part of our programme. And ultimately, that's going to have an impact on price increases and maybe impacting on schools and school swimming lessons and user groups. And it's a really, really challenging time for us.
So, Greg, what have Mr Sunak's constituents had to say about this today?
Well, perhaps not surprisingly, Rachel Maskell, the MP, the Labour MP for York Central down the road, she's criticised him and saying this shows he's out of touch with the realities of people's lives. But there has been rather a more mixed response from constituents we spoke to just down the road in Northallerton earlier this afternoon.
Well, I'm not impressed. Yeah, he lives in a different world, doesn't he, really?
I think it's his money and it's entirely up to him what he does with it.
Yeah, I am pretty disgusted, yes. Like you say, we're struggling and he's put new power in for his swimming pool and that.
Doesn't seem right to you?
It doesn't seem right, no.
No comments from number 10 this evening. You do suspect, though, that pool house not quite solely the source of relaxation that the Prime Minister was hoping for.
Well, Greg Eastill, live for us in Richmond for now. Thank you very much.
Next tonight, thousands of junior doctors across our region have taken to picket lines for the first of 3 days of strike action, thought to be the biggest walkout of doctors in NHS history. It's led to thousands of operations and appointments cancelled after doctors' unions balloted members over what they say has been a real terms pay cut of more than 26% in the past 15 years. Well, unions are calling for a 35% pay rise in a bid to make up for years of lost earnings. But today the Health Secretary branded that unaffordable and called for an end to the strikes. Jonathan Brown reports.
In the shadows of this workplace, these doctors, whose efforts often go unnoticed, are leaving their wards to make themselves heard over what they see as an NHS in crisis.
It hurts when you've seen that the care that you're able to give for your patients isn't the optimal care because you just don't have the staff around you.
Sophie and Aritri, who both work in cancer services, say staff are reaching burnout and patient care is suffering. All this after a pandemic, they say, tested them like never before.
Because we care about people and because we want to do everything, we've just been keeping quiet and just keeping our heads down and getting on with it. We're not just numbers on a spreadsheet, we're actually humans as well, and this isn't sustainable.
You get to an end of a 12, 13, 14-hour shift and you're in tears at the end of the day because you're just thinking about your patients and their families and what a bad job you feel like you've done.
Unions say junior doctors' pay has fallen in real terms by 26% since 2008. Now they're calling for a 35% rise, which they hope will prevent staff leaving hospitals like this.
Last year, the NHS spent £3 billion on locum agencies to cover the shortness of the staff that we have. So is that affordable? If they paid junior doctors a decent wage, there would be no issues with recruitment and retention.
Well, this week's strike action will inevitably have an impact on patients. This minor injuries unit at the Royal Hallamshire Hospital has been closed temporarily, for example. And in a statement, Sheffield Teaching Hospitals told us, regrettably, we are also having to postpone some outpatient appointments and procedures. Those, they say, will be rearranged as soon as possible.
These are just some of the medications that I take at home.
Among those affected is Rebecca, who lives with chronic pain due to endometriosis. She was due to have a radical hysterectomy today, but found out last week it had been cancelled.
I'm feeling very low. I just really thought today was going to be the start of a pain-free life for me.
Whilst we are prioritising emergency care, intensive care, maternity services as you'd expect, nearly all other services will be impacted.
People here say that disruption will be felt until this industrial action ends at 7 a.m. on Thursday, unless the government calms this storm by making them a reasonable offer.
35% as a demand is not affordable. We've offered to engage in constructive talks with the junior doctors.
So while the divide appears to be widening between the demands of doctors and the position of government, people here say they still have hope that a brighter future for the NHS is on the horizon. Jonathan Brown, ITV News, Sheffield.
On to other news, and the family of a North Yorkshire teenager who died in an adult homeless hostel say their son was failed by the system which was supposed to care for him.
At the conclusion of an inquest into Ben Nelson Rue's death, the coroner criticised the lack of help available across the country for children like Ben. But he said there was no evidence to suggest being in the hostel played any part in his death. Helen Steele reports.
Kind, funny and adventurous. But at just 16, Ben Nelson Rue died in a homeless hostel meant for adults. His final year was a troubled one. Exploited by county lines gangs and taking drugs, he was admitted to hospital numerous times. He was on the waiting list for a young person's hostel when he died in April 2020. Today, at the conclusion of a 15-day inquest, the coroner told Ben's parents the cause of his death could not be ascertained, as he couldn't be sure of the level of drugs in his system.
To us, Ben's life was seen as less valuable because he used drugs. Because he used drugs, there was an assumption that that was the cause of his death, and it stuck. There was no further investigation, which is what anyone would expect following the death of a child.
Ben had refused to go into North Yorkshire County Council's care system and refused to go home. 2 months before his death, he ended up at Cavendish House in Harrogate. The council accepted it was unsuitable, but said there was nothing else available in the area. The inquest also heard there's a lack of support across the country for children like Ben. Today, Senior Coroner John Heath said he would write to the Health Secretary, voicing concerns that there are no drug rehabilitation facilities for under 18s anywhere in the UK. He'll also write to North Yorkshire County Council, asking why they didn't look for appropriate accommodation for Ben outside the local area. Despite these concerns, though, he said there's no evidence to suggest that the suitability of Ben's accommodation played any part in his death. North Yorkshire County Council today said that although Ben refused to go into care, it had supported him during his time in the hostel. The aim, it said, was always for Ben to return home.
Traditionally, social workers look for problems within the home, and yet recently they found increasing dangers from outside the family. Social workers need to work collaboratively with families to safeguard their children. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a change Ben's mother says she'll campaign for in memory of her son. Helen Steele, ITV News in Northallerton.
Now you're watching Monday's calendar, and still to come, all the weekend's sporting action from Chris, plus Cool As You Like, the Yorkshire duo who took the Dancing on Ice crown.
And no chance of dancing on ice over the last 24 hours with a rapid snowmelt, a mild, wet and windy day today. Better get your skates on if you like it that way. Colder from the end of tonight, and all the detail a little later on.
Well, next to the scientific research that's changing our understanding of how the brain sends signals to our hands, which could help people with limb difference in the future.
Scientists say the discovery could pave the way for people to eventually control prosthetics with their minds. It's been welcomed by people with limb difference who say the future looks good. Emily Knight reports.
For Ben Lovell from Halifax, climbing mountains is a way to challenge himself. Ben had his leg amputated in 2017 after developing a blood clot.
I wanted to try and push myself further than I ever did with two legs. So climbing mountains was a way to get me out. I got kind of addicted to that thing of I shouldn't be able to do this, but I pushed myself.
Ben climbs mountains to raise money for AMP Camp, which takes children with limb difference from across the Callander region on trips abroad. 40, 50 years ago, when the legs were basically just something tin and straight and didn't do much, I'm sure that life would have been a lot harder for me back then than what it is now. Now the future could be full of possibilities thanks to research into how our brains send signals to our hands to pick up tools like cutlery.
So we found that, in contrary to what people thought before, that the areas that are important for representing how to correctly grasp objects were the areas that actually respond to images of hands. What we think we might be able to do is to perhaps use brain-computer interfaces and place them in this visual hand area. And this might help trick the brain, think that the prosthetic is actually the real hand.
PhD student Hannah Browning is now following up this research, specifically looking at people with limb difference, like her 9-year-old son Max, who was born without the lower part of his right arm. He uses a cosmetic prosthetic.
They can't really move that much, but I'm okay with that.
We want to look and see what's happening in the brain when we're using them, which areas of the brain are active when we're using them. Living with Max every day is a reminder of what prosthetics are, but also what they could be.
The hope is to harness this research to make prosthetics more user-friendly. So Hannah, what are your hopes for Max and other people with limb difference for the future?
Bigger advancement in the prosthetics that are available and that hopefully provide more function and aid to their everyday life.
She hopes, she says, to make a small contribution to people with limb difference like Max, helping them to live more effectively in a two-handed world. Emily Knight, ITV News.
Let's hope it leads to a brighter future for them. OK, time for sport now, and news of a sanction from the Football League for Huddersfield Town.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
Yes, and Chris is here, one of the few sports presenters not to be chased by the paparazzi over the weekend.
Yeah,
down
not
the street.
Not yet.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. Now then, Huddersfield Town, it's not really a great time to be a fan, is it?
It's not. Not only are they struggling to stay in the Championship, but today they've been placed under a transfer embargo for breaching a regulation regarding the submission of their accounts. Now, this will come as a further blow to Town fans, with their team, as I said, really struggling in the Championship. After Saturday's defeat at West Brom, they're 6 points from safety with just 10 games of the season left. Remember, it's less than a year since the Terriers were in the playoff final and just one win away from promotion to the Premier League. Now, not a good day for our region's Championship team. Sheffield United lost at home to Luton, and Rotherham's 3-game unbeaten run came to an end at strugglers Birmingham. Better news in League One though, where Sheffield Wednesday extended their unbeaten run to 22 matches with victory at Portsmouth. They're very much now in the driving seat for promotion. And Barnsley showed they too fancy a shot at a return to the Championship with a convincing win over second place Plymouth. The Tykes in 4th and very much in the race for promotion.
Sheffield Wednesday at home and Ipswich at home, they're the next 2 home games, so they don't get any easier, but they're the games that players want to be involved in. The supporters have bought into it now and we've given ourselves a chance to do something, but there's 3 very good teams ahead of us. We're still looking behind us, so just win the next one in front of you.
In League Two, Bradford remain well in the promotion mix-up despite losing the lead at Newport given to them by Andy Cook. Harrogate Town manager Simon Weaver apologised to the fans after what he said was a lousy performance down at strugglers Crawley. But better days for Doncaster Rovers fans who saw their team pick up a much-needed win over Wimbledon. Now, I've got to show you this from the Bradford game at the weekend. Now, Newport share their ground with the Dragons Rugby Union team, so the different markings are visible on the pitch. Well, that certainly confused Bantams keeper Harry Lewis, who thought he was inside his box when he collected this through ball. Thankfully, the referee understood Harry's predicament and only showed him a yellow card. Lucky boy.
Oh dear, dear, dear. Now, I know we don't normally mention the non-league sides, do we? But it was a special day at Chesterfield on Saturday, wasn't it?
It certainly was, yeah. Now, if Chesterfield are to win promotion from the National League, it won't be for the want of their support. Almost 7,000 fans watched the Spyrites draw 1-1 against Yeovil on Saturday, but the game might well be a first for English football because players were introduced on the video screen in the ground by children using sign language. John Hill was there for us.
Number 12, Tyrone Williams. The game hasn't even started, but in this corner of the ground, they're already on their feet. And that's because these children from New Whittington Primary School in Chesterfield are the stars themselves. Number 10, Ryan Holcomb. Both non-hearing and hearing children at the school learn British Sign Language. Number 6, Lawrence McGuire. And Saturday's pre-recorded player announcements were a chance to showcase their skills.
They get immense pride that they can communicate with all of their peers at school, both hearing children and deaf children. They also think such a lot of the football club. So to do something here with such prestige and be the first people probably to ever do this nationally is immense for our children.
I like Chesterfield football team.
It's really good because it can communicate with people who are deaf, but then it can also be brought into the world of hearing and communicate with hearing children as well.
We have a few deaf children, so the whole school learns sign language so we can communicate with them children.
What a day for those kids, one they won't forget for a while, will it?
Indeed.
That's your lot from me.
Chris, thank you very much indeed.
You're very welcome.
Well, the ITV Evening News continues at 6:30 with more on today's strikes. Here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up in the programme, Gary Lineker will be back on screen as the BBC apologises for the disruption. It's now going to review its social media guidelines as questions remain about the corporation's handling of the incident. Also tonight, tens of thousands of junior doctors are on strike over pay, with NHS bosses warning of disruption. A major incident is declared in Swansea after a suspected gas explosion. And from Manchester to Hollywood, the creative minds behind some Oscar-winning puppets. Do join me for that and more at 6:30.
Mary, thanks very much indeed. And Kerry is with us now.
Hiya.
It's been a windy one today, Kerry.
It's been a mild and blowy one, I'll tell you. 62 mile an hour gusts over the tops of the Pennines and 55 miles an hour out towards the coast, and coupled with that really heavy showers. But it all started to transition, didn't it, during the course of the weekend? This is how it started, that snow cover, the beautiful blue skies. I know that a lot of you enjoyed at least the first half of the weekend. This was Mid-Upstones, right over the moors near Bradfield. A big thank you to Richard Craven for this one. And also this one in Lady Bower, beautiful combination of blue sky and snow cover, and the still waters there on Saturday, not so still today, I imagine. This was Millhouse Green in South Yorkshire. Look at Gizmo, he's getting blown to smithereens during the course of this afternoon. And Rainbows was about as good as it got today. Of course, we've had that snow melt with the heavy rain. The rivers and the becks have been in full flow today for sure, and a big thank you to Steve Davey for sharing this shot at the weir at Otley. Now, yesterday was when it all started to transition. 13 degrees yesterday afternoon. Last night, not much lower than around 8 Celsius. The average is around 9 or 10. Today we got to 14. But it's very topsy-turvy this week. We've got some cold Arctic air again tonight and through into tomorrow. And then Wednesday, another transition of wet and windy and mild weather for Thursday and into the next part of next week.
Can't make its mind up.
Another busy week, Sally, I'll tell you.
Now, the snow and ice that we saw over the weekend hasn't gone away for good, has it?
No, nothing as dramatic as late last week, for sure. But we could see some hill snow, certainly over the tops of the Pennines and through into tomorrow. Definitely where we get any wintry showers. It's cold enough, so there is a risk of snow and ice, certainly over high ground, but maybe even at lower levels. And it's the ice, I think, as we head into tomorrow morning and that cold air starts to dig in, some slippery surfaces for sure to watch out for. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's not updated during the course of Tuesday, for sure.
OK, Kerry, thanks very much for the heads up on that. We'll keep a close eye on the situation and we'll see you at the end of the programme for a detailed forecast.
Yeah,
thanks,
look forward
Kerry.
to that, won't we? Now then, finally, they've only gone and done it, haven't they? Former Olympic gymnast Niall Wilson and his professional partner Olivia from Sheffield have won Dancing on Ice.
Yes, the final, watched by millions on ITV1 last night, saw the couple go head-to-head with Joey Essex and Vanessa in the Bolero dance-off, and the public vote saw a Yorkshire victory.
Well, earlier Sally spoke to them both and asked first how they felt when they were announced winners.
Oh, it's difficult to describe in words, the emotion, you know, just so ecstatic and proud, relieved that it was all over, because, you know, this week was really, really tough, and the work that we had to put in. But yeah, we're very, very happy.
I can imagine there must be a huge range of emotions. Let's have a look at that trophy then. You've got it there.
Here we go.
She's a beaut.
That's what all the hard work was for. And Niall, you really did put the work in, and the first male contestant to perform a headbanger. How was that?
Oh, it was so much fun. You know, we set out to do something that, you know, that was game changing and history making, and I think we really achieved that last night with the Pirates of the Caribbean performance for sure. But yeah, like at the very beginning, I said to Liv, like, I just want to skate well.
How much does your experience as a gymnast contribute to your ability on the ice?
You know, I've been asked this question a lot, and I think throughout the process, I didn't want to say, yes, it's big advantage and come out with like, of course, I'm going to be good or better or anything, but 100%, you know, gymnastics is fundamental body awareness. It's like non-comparable. It's the best thing for anyone to do, you know, and particularly kids, not just to be a gymnast, but for anything. Like I can pick stuff up just because I know where my body is. All that years experience, I knew how to fall over, which was just giving me the courage to try anything on the ice.
Olivia, coming to you now, your first time on Dancing on Ice, and you go away with the trophy. That must be hugely satisfying.
Yeah, I came in with a bang, clearly. It was an unbelievable experience for me. I've learned so much doing this show. I was competing before this, went to the Olympics, but doing this I've learned more than I ever have in any competitions in the past.
Well, you're both very busy people, clearly. And now, just to come back to you, I know you said that skating gave you a focus at a time when leaving gymnastics had perhaps left you a bit without that. What you talk about your plans for the future. What's next? What's your focus going to be?
I think this process has given me, it's taught me so much about myself. It's sort of scratched an itch that I've been desiring, but also made me realise I don't need to. You know, I've got so much more to give in this world, and I don't need to have the adrenaline rush and be on top of the world.
Great message. And Olivia, you've said the partnership that you've formed on ice is a friendship that will continue for life.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, right. It's been great to speak to you both. Well done. Thank you for all the enjoyment you've given us over the weeks, and all the best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye, Sally.
Lots of love.
Oh, really worthy winners, weren't they? And I know it's been great entertainment over the weeks, but Niall did also talk about how he hopes he can inspire people that if you put the effort in, you can really achieve anything, and it's got to be a great message.
I know, but you wouldn't get me doing a headbanger, I tell you that now, Sally.
Are you sure? I couldn't
Certainly
persuade you.
Not.
Well,
no
that's
way.
good to know. All right, here's Kerry now with the weather.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello again. So it's been a pretty unsettled start to the new working week. Yes, we have seen some sunshine, evidence of a few rainbows across the region during the course of this morning, but often wet for much of this week. That colder spell coming through tonight until the latter part of Wednesday, and then milder and more unsettled again from Thursday onwards. So this has been the scene so far today. Those strong southwesterly winds, a lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain, heaviest and most persistent over the hills. But behind this system, as it pushes its way southwards, that northerly starting to kick in. So as we head deeper into tonight, initially it's cloudy with showery outbreaks of rain, but turning increasingly wintry over the tops. A few centimetres right over the hills possible. Nothing too problematic at lower levels apart from the risk of everything freezing as the night progresses, and we're sub-zero across many parts as we head into the early part of tomorrow. Cold, frosty and potentially icy. 6:24 and 6:08 are your sun times, but a good dose of sunshine for the morning. Now a keen northwesterly wind, and that's going to peg back the feel of the temperatures as we head into the afternoon, and we could see some showers which could clump together, especially over the Pennines, again giving a few centimetres of snow. So wintry showers, blustery conditions, feeling like freezing, everything sinking south, and the widespread frost, the risk of ice into the early part of Wednesday. But then this area of rain knocks into the colder air. Again, we could see a little bit of sleet and snow on the leading edge of this system before it quite rapidly turns back to rain, and then it becomes increasingly unsettled throughout Thursday into Friday. So again, stronger winds, a lot of cloud around, outbreaks of rain, and not quite so chilly by night as well over the next few days.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
There you go, everything from the wardrobe.
I blame you, Kerry, because you said you weren't ready for the end of winter, so I think you're bringing all this cold weather on.
I did say that.
Oh, well, it can't last forever, I suppose.
It can't.
But certainly lots to keep us on our toes, isn't there?
It's not over till it's over, is it? That's that winter. That's it for now. Have a very good evening. We'll see you again tomorrow at 6. Bye-bye.
Bye.